Welcome to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke, and today's guest is Beth Byer. She is an RN, an ordained rabbi, an attorney, and a spiritual hypnotherapist. Her work in spiritual hypnotherapy helps us achieve physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being and allows us to access part of ourselves that holds all the answers. In this episode, we will discuss how we can communicate with our higher self as well as between lives soul regression. Beth, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Johnny. Happy to be here.
You have a very, very interesting and varied background. How did you find yourself on this path of spiritual hypnotherapy?
Well, there were several careers that preceded the spiritual hypnotherapy, and like a walking path, each one led to the next thing. As a nurse, I learned about the physicality of people, and then in psychiatric nursing as a master's program, the emotional components of folks. Interestingly, the next leg was doing legal work, medical malpractice, administrative work, and then now sitting as a judge on small cases. Since, after you've been a judge or an attorney for 30 years, the next logical step is to sit as a judge. So that's kind of one of the pieces that I currently do. Then as a rabbi, the next piece in my next chapter of this book called My Life has taught me about the depth of humanity from a spiritual perspective. Fascinating work, whether it's doing bar bat mitzvahs, funerals, weddings, it's seeing humanity close and personal. We also had a son who passed away when he was 15, and that has perhaps, among other things, pushed me forward and allowed me to just really do a lot of deep searching about what's this universe about, why are we here, what happens after we die. So all of those pieces culminated together in what is now a spiritual hypnotherapy practice.
Which makes this an excellent fit for what we do on this podcast, because the whole point of Closer to Venus is to explore why we are here, how did we get here, what are we supposed to be doing, and of course, what really happens once we leave this planet. So good for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned the death of humanity. Now, your faith, which is obviously a little bit different than Christianity, did that have an impact on this path or not necessarily?
First, let me say, if I said anything about death, it would have been with regard to more personal, our son who passed on. And God willing, humanity will live long and prosper, as they say. In terms of, did Judaism have anything to do with learning? The thing that's really hard when I go to speak to folks as a rabbi is to have them understand that Judaism isn't a belief system. And so as a result, it's more about our practice and our kindness and compassion with each other, which is really an imperative ethic in our time, especially given the chaos that perhaps many of us and turmoil that many of us have perhaps experienced of late.
No question about that.
Yeah, and my background and rabbinic work says ask a question. It's more about what are the questions that we ask as opposed to the answers.
Very good point. Now, getting back to the spiritual hypnotherapy, between lives soul regression, how is it similar to life between lives regression, or is it essentially the same thing?
Much of it overlaps because Dr. Linda Backman, who did Between Lives Soul Regression, taught and worked with Dr. Michael Newton, who developed Life Between Lives. So LBL is my current work in terms of working on the newest certification. In 2024, Michael Newton Institute has developed new protocols, a new education program, because consciousness of humanity has evolved. People are more readily brought to trance. Our subconscious is perhaps more present than it used to be in the past. In the past, when we hear about 40 years ago, Dolores Cannon or Dr. Newton, when they took clients to trance, it took a long time. Now we have a number of people. Clients can come to my office and in moments of having a conversation, starting their induction, they're already in trance. It's amazing. So yeah, humanity's evolving and God willing in a good way.
Yeah, let's hope so. So people are falling into a trance much quicker because humanity is evolving. Is that at all related to what a lot of us hear about the veil getting thinner?
That would seem to be another way to describe the same thing.
I had someone that was on the show about a week ago when I asked the same question, is the veil getting thinner? And she said the veil's gone. And I said, okay, well, maybe for some of the intuitives that may be true, but for the rest of us, I'm not really sure. But any way you look at it, the consensus is it's getting thinner. With Life Between Lives, did you venture into past life regression first, or is that part of the same process anyway?
Past life regression is often used as a bridge to get to the spirit world. There are many ways to get there, and that's one way to do that.
But isn't Life Between Lives, that space, which has been called many different names, isn't that the spiritual realm anyway, or is it a little bit more complicated?
With regard to what does the spirit world look like, I would say that it's a construct for the human mind that when clients go into trance, our guides, our angels, our spirit team need to set a stage for us to be able to understand what they're trying to communicate. Because truly it's all energy. And unless we have context, I've had some clients come in who say, yeah, I'm seeing like orbs and plaids and wavy lines. I'm like, well, yes, but could you ask your guides if we could have a little more clear human language here, right? Because it's vibration, it's energy, it's color. Yet we need human language to be able to communicate with each other. Now, certainly telepathically in the spirit world, that all works. But that's why I think Dr. Newton came up with a map of the spirit world. And that was one way for us humans to have a logical conversation about what goes on the other side.
Speaking of what goes on the other side, the life between lives space is often described as a place where lives are planned, pre-birth planning. It's almost like casting a movie or casting a play. Has your experience been consistent with that?
Absolutely. Dr. Newton, when he did his practice, he actually practiced without telling anybody for a long time because 40 years ago, this was just outlandish. No one would have believed him, right? So he ended up with 7,000 clients, and now there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of clients who have similar experiences, regardless of belief system or lack thereof, regardless of religion,
That's a good point.
regardless of race, culture, country. So, yes, there are, at least from a map standpoint with regard to Dr. Newton's work, there's a divine council, there's our soul groups, there is a recreation area, our classrooms, the library or Akashic records. There's a body selection area where we speak about and make plans and contracts with loved ones to decide what themes we want to address in our upcoming lives.
It's incredible. So we're all like actors, as I believe William Shakespeare said, all the world's indeed a stage. We are only players, performers, and portrayers.
Right? It's so true. Yeah. And did he really know what was behind that? Because, wow.
Sure sounds like it.
Right.
There's so many questions when this topic comes up, and I think it's one of the most important ones because I think it does explain a lot more than the dusty old textbooks of different belief systems. And we're not going to go into that today. But for instance, can you break a soul contract? Has a client ever brought that up?
Yes.
What's your experience been?
So the answer to that is it depends. It depends upon the contract, depends upon the other person. Because if one has a contract for a relationship, and some of these contracts aren't easy, some of them are tough, some of them are learning curves that are abusive. It's like, why would one ever create a soul contract like that, right? Or one comes in with a contract to have a disability. Can there be healing, right? I mean, all of these pieces are like, why would we ever? But think about it. Who's going to learn more? The person who has a challenging teacher or the person who sails through? So the answer is it depends. I've had clients come in who really want absolute healing and have asked for it and have talked to their guides and said, the guides have said, this was your contract. This is what you asked for. The person was very disappointed, but they were also given some relief. Depending upon what the issue is, sometimes things can be mopped up 10%. That may be a lot. right? Depending upon what they're living with.
Indeed. I do believe QHHT, pretty sure this comes from Dolores Cannon. How is that different from, let's say, like the first forms of past life regression?
Past life regression is often people's curiosity about what past lives. And quite frankly, it's a bit of a misnomer. If we all understood that all time is now, we have this linear progression because we live on planet Earth, that if we were outside of planet Earth, we probably wouldn't have. If we were able to see from the bird's eye view, we would say, oh, those people are experiencing time. But in spirit world, there may be simultaneous time or a linear progression. It doesn't have to be this long progression like it is on planet Earth. With regard to Dolores Cannon's work, amazing work, fabulous work, there's a lot of practitioners who do QHHT, quantum healing hypnosis technique. It really truly does focus often on physical healing that clients come in for. That depends upon soul contract, what their issues are. Typically, our body is giving us messages. If somebody comes in and they've got a particular condition, asthma, hip pain, whatever it is, there are books out that now speak to what is it that you're supposed to learn, because the body is trying to tell us, our higher self is trying to tell us all the time. Sometimes we listen and often we don't. And when we fail to listen to what our higher self is trying to tell us, instead of the carrot, it's the proverbial stick. So that's often how that occurs. We don't always listen to ourselves. So in terms of hypnotherapy, the folks who are doing LBL, Life Between Lives, there's a lot more requirement with regard to entering the program, being experienced hypnotherapist. With QHHT, there are many people who are practicing. They don't necessarily have to have as much hypnotherapy background. That doesn't mean they're any better or any worse. It just depends upon who you resonate with. If you're going to make a recommendation to someone, I'd say either look at their picture, read about their background, make a decision based upon how that person comes across. It may be somebody with tons of years of experience or somebody with much less. It depends upon who the individual resonates with. That's the best practitioner for them.
You mentioned the higher self a minute ago, and I've heard a lot of different explanations of what the higher self actually is. So if you were talking to a bunch of high school kids and they said, Beth, what is the higher self? What exactly is that?
There's a number of ways to look at it. We can look at the soul, which is connected to each incarnation. We can look at the oversoul, which is connected to all of our incarnations. We could use the term higher self to either mean soul or guide, because we have guides or angels, however you want to label the spirit crew. I recently heard someone else's videocast talking about how we're down here doing deep sea diving and our spirit team is the boat up on top. And when we finish our snorkel adventure or scuba dive, we go up and we talk to them, right? That's the spirit world. And we can have that direct conversation. So it was a great metaphor, because otherwise we're here doing our thing, being very immersed in this deep sea dive that we're experiencing. Where exactly is the higher self? You can argue that it's just one level above you, or it's your soul. It's perhaps more of a nebulous term.
Deep sea diving. I really like that.
That comes from Bashar. Let me quote my source.
And for those of us who don't know who or what Bashar is, because we hear a lot about him as well, what has been your experience with him, or do you just read his quotes, or how does that work?
To be completely candid, I just listened to a recent channeling by Daryl Anka. The fascinating part from a nursing scientific perspective, at least on Gaia TV, it indicates that when Daryl is channeling Bashar, who is the sixth or fifth dimensional being that is coming through and speaking through him, he's not using the average brain parts that the average person uses. So in other words, it's not Daryl's personality that's coming through, according to MRI. Wow. Okay, now you got me, right? I mean, now you got some science behind that. I'm pretty fascinated. So that was his metaphor for how it is being here on planet Earth. And I have to say, I really love that. And thank you for letting me speak about that, because I was very enthralled, very inspired by listening to him.
No, I think it's entirely relevant, and I'm glad that I brought that up. Just to backtrack a little bit, you mentioned angels earlier. Whenever I think of angels, I think of star beings, or what some people call extraterrestrials, because apparently they don't like being called aliens. Have you had any experience with them, communicated with them, or does this come up in your sessions?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's absolutely some clients that are angels here on Earth. There's hybrid beings that are part extraterrestrial. They have that very much in their subconsciousness, and that's what comes out as their past life on a different planet, something like that. Or a recent client was in the angelic realm, being part of the angel group. And when you ask questions and you get such amazing answers, you think, wow, okay, this client did not come in to fabricate anything. They came in to be completely candid and had very real questions that are being answered. And they're also providing fascinating details of no, they don't really eat, that they absorb energy from the light that's in the space that they're in. And it's always light in the space that they're in.
I guess they don't have to go food shopping then, right?
At least some of them might not. Dr. Newton was not terribly fond of looking at hybrids or angels, but I have to say that, in Dolores Cannon's work, she has found that more volunteers are coming from higher dimensions to help planet Earth in whatever we're going through, which is apparently a big bundle of challenges that, well, most of us are facing. And maybe more and more beings from elsewhere are here.
Oh, come on, bring it on, guys and girls.
Right?
You mentioned lives on other planets. I've had several people come onto the podcast and talk very candidly about galactic past lives, lives on other planets, as if they were talking about, well, I transferred from St. Joe's to Villanova after that. I did my graduate work at Princeton. They made it sound like it's not really a huge deal.
And quite frankly, it's not. Because even if we don't remember, many people have had past lives on other planets. It sounds far-fetched to our ears. We're just not used to it. But if you sit in my chair during the average week, I hear a lot of amazing things from just the average person you would never suspect being from a different planet. And it may be that their ears or their noses are different, or the way about gathering herbs to bring them to various places. Maybe that's unique. And I can tell they're on a different planet because of the way they're dressed, the way they're speaking, or they tell me, well, I see 3 suns. Oh, okay. I know that's not planet Earth.
During these sessions with your clients, do you experience along with them what they're saying as if you can connect to them, or are you just listening to their testimony?
Part of me is always just listening to their testimony because my role is to hold space. It's not to be a medium. There are many times when I will catch glimpses in my own mind's eye, or I will feel amazing energy just in the room, that the room shifts. You can just feel how that vibration is just unique to this client. Yeah.
So the experience of listening to these amazing stories from your clients, they obviously talk about the spirit world a lot. And I've been told by people like mediums and people who channel and have these amazing experiences that there are levels to the spirit world. Are there like 3 or 4 or maybe more levels than that?
My thought would be there's much like the layer of an onion, and we all have lessons. It's not hierarchical. It depends upon how you want to look at things. If all time is now, we may have 1,000,000 lifetimes in the past, and we may have 1,000,000 in the future. We're here now, and that's pretty hard to sort of grasp, to figure out what exactly that means. So all I can say is we're all walking each other home. We could talk about hierarchies and somebody who's more spiritual, but that's way ego and way human kind of thought form, not the way it is in the spirit realm. There is a soul nursery. There are people who are in charge of the soul nursery. There are people who monitor the atmosphere for the soul nursery. There are beings who guide other beings. There are beings who no longer incarnate. There are beings who are behind the divine councils. How big are they? What are they in relationship to my client? Or how did they impact my client's life on earth? Those are more my questions. How can this information be relevant for my client? How can they understand better what they need to know to empower them in this lifetime?
To return to the idea of humanity is evolving, do you think that the work of Life Between Lives can act as a kind of agent that accelerates
Yeah.
our evolution and ascension?
Absolutely, because this is really the crux of spiritual work. This is really, as they say, where the rubber meets the road. Many people do not know who they are. They really don't have answers to deep-seated questions about themselves. And my role is merely to ask questions, and they answer those questions under hypnosis. And all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. They're answering their own questions. It's not me. My role is to ask open, not leading questions.
So, what are some of your most interesting cases, speaking of which?
Every case, every client is so different, so vastly different. It's kind of like walking through a garden going, wow, that's an interesting flower. Oh, look at that one. Oh, what a pretty color. Oh, what an interesting shape. Everything from people who regress to very average lives and die very averagely, as if it were average to listen to somebody say, and I just stepped out of my body. Yeah, I'm looking at it now. I'm like, wow, even just that part? People who die as a cowboy, people who die sitting in a courtyard where there's servants walking around in another area, people who die violently. Oh my gosh, one woman who was being burned as a witch. When I've got somebody who's in a terrible death scene, get them out of that physical body and have them move into observer mode. Clients really do experience the emotion as well as physical pain when they're in that. And the one thing you just can't fake, you really can't fake emotions. I mean, people are desperately sad about leaving another family they never met, but was part of a past life. So, interesting cases. I think the hybrid beings are interesting. I think people, when they get to a body selection station in the spirit world and they've got a whole selection. I had one client who said, oh, yeah, there's 5 bodies here for me to try on. I can try those on. I'm like, would you like to do that? Yes, okay. So one is an ant. So she tries on the ant essentially costume. And I said, what's your guide say about that? Oh, well, he's telling me that even little things are important.
So, it is possible to incarnate as something other than a human.
People do also have potential bodies as other dimensional beings. So, in other words, they may not be human in a more evolved way from our hierarchical thinking.
That's what I would want to do.
Let's get out of planet Earth, right?
Let's get out of here.
That's what everybody says. But we're going to be given that option. And I'll bet you some of the folks are going to say, gosh, I learned so much in that life.
I've heard that a lot as well. It's the densest of all the planets, apparently. I'm like, yeah, sure is dense. Did you see what happened in the last election? Jesus.
Ouch.
All right, enough of that.
I think one of the things we need to do is to really ensure that we are walking all of each other home so that when we can reach across the aisle and create kindness and compassion, trying to be respectful. Yeah, we all kind of need to get there. It's not easy. Yeah, really not easy.
No, it really isn't. And what are the most important lessons that your clients tell you about?
One of the things that people come to my office for most often is, what's my life purpose? People will have themes, and the answer may or may not be forthcoming from guides. But the thing that is probably the most important takeaway is that it's loving and caring, and there isn't any judgment except for self-judgment. Even negative experiences are part of our learning experience, and the attitude we carry is the most important piece. How we react to those negative experiences, again, is the most important piece.
So, what do they say about the divine council? I've heard that also described as the Council of 12.
With regard to taking a client to the Divine Council, first I would recommend Dr. Newton's books, either Journey of Souls or Destiny of Souls, and say that there are varying numbers of people, beings on a council, 3 to 5, maybe 10 typically. And these beings are ones that oversee our journeys, not just planet Earth, but all of our journeys. Often it's us coming to terms with the failures or regrets that we haven't made right for whatever reason. So it's not them judging us in a negative or harsh way. By far and by large, the message is you are loved, we care about you, we support you. We love you unconditionally. You are doing well. Trust that you're worthy. Those are the kinds of messages that typically come from councils. Often that's where my clients end up to get their questions answered. So if they're asking about a relationship or they're asking about a loved one who's passed, it may be that the soul of the loved one may show up, and or the council may provide some insight and information.
So they can see their past loved ones and friends that do pop up in the sessions?
They do. I've had some parents who've had children who've died, and it could make me cry just thinking about some of those sessions of when, particularly kids who've suicided, and parents are like, what happened and why, and the guilt, all of those things that follow in those kinds of tragic deaths. Yeah, it gives people just a real sense of understanding that this was a contract, this was what was meant to happen, and it's okay. Even children are souls, and they may choose to exit at a particular time for the learning of the people that are left behind.
So a suicide might have actually been by contract, as you're saying.
Interestingly enough.
It's the first time I've heard that, but it does make sense, as sad as that is. But the one thing that anyone, even the casual observer or listener in this case, can take away from this is that consciousness goes on. It doesn't just stop when your life ends, because if we can remember past lives, I do believe Dr. Newton had about, 7,000 cases? And
He
they're all
did, yeah.
pretty much saying the same thing. If we can remember the past lives and the in-between space, obviously we don't just go in the ground when it's over. John Lennon was quoted as saying, I don't believe in death. It's like getting out of one car and getting into another.
Yep,
right?
Exactly that. And some people go to future lives. Just saying, Johnny. Future lives are also another area of interest and introspection for some. Yeah, getting help from a future life to come back and help you out here and give you information, another bridge for help.
Have you seen that in your work as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Once the tape stops, I'm going to ask you what my future life looks like, but we're not going to go into that here.
Johnny is bright. I'll just tell you, it's looking good. It's looking bright.
But how can you really tell? Wait, don't answer that. I just had to throw that in there because apparently one of my brother's friends watched one of my episodes and said, he's really super serious, isn't he? And when I heard that, I thought, he obviously hasn't listened to all of them. So cool. Beth, great stuff. Thanks for joining us tonight. In the meantime, how can our listeners find you online?
www.Reno Life Between Lives, or on Facebook, looking up Beth Byer page, Page, so it directs to my official business page.
You've been listening to Closer to Venus and Johnny Burke. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing. In the meantime, you can find more info on closertovenus.com. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.